Hey guys, how are you today? It is a beautiful Monday morning. It is gorgeous and snowy out. I have finished shoveling the driveway already, and I picked up some stuff offline. So, we're going to do some different stuff today. So, because I seem to have a really weird, difficult time with actually telling you guys the stories and reading them while I'm trying to do my makeup, which seems to, in my personal opinion, have an effect on how good my videos are turning out. And I want to make you guys happy. I want you guys to have so much fun. This is fun time for everybody, right? And we here in my strange area want us to have a good time. So, instead of reading the stories, I'm going to give a shout out to Mr. Nightmare because I absolutely love all of his stories that he reads and his videos. And we're gonna check out his 3 horrifying true New Year's Eve horror stories, and we're gonna listen to those after while we are opening up our lovely package here. So, first things first, let's see what we got. I ordered a bunch of stuff to test. Well, a couple of jewelry pieces just because I want to see if they're any good quality. But there are 2 things to test off of Shein for us here. And today, okay, so this here is, I believe, our cleanser headband and wristlets. Oh, that's I love the satisfying crinkly noises. Ooh, that feels nice. Oh, it's so soft. This was definitely worth. Oh my gosh. Ooh, and it's so cute. I have oh my gosh. My inner cozy goth girl's coming out. So, what else do we have in here? I think that the pendant fell off of this. Yeah. So, just gonna figure, yeah, we're gonna try to find that, because that's really pretty. I was excited for that. Aha, here it is. So, I'm gonna be honest, it's obviously not the best quality. It feels like costume jewelry. But, oh my lord, it is so pretty. Look at that. Ooh, it feels nice too. It feels like one of those mood necklaces that you get. So, I love ravens. I love crows. I don't know if anybody else has this strange obsession, but if you do, please hit me up because I would love to hang out with you and talk about the ravens and crows and all of the good jazz that we talk about here on our lovely channel. So, oh, that's our surprise. Oh, why does that have earrings? Okay. I don't know what that is. Okay, so we have a couple more necklaces. Oh, that one's pretty. And a few other things. I'm not actually sure what this is. Hoping it's good. people. So, what we have here, that's a part of our surprise for during our video. Okay, so once again, the chain's not exactly amazing quality, but I wasn't really expecting that much. That is beautiful. Look at those. Ooh, it feels nice and cold too. It's obviously resin, but it kind of feels like a real crystal, so that's a win, right? Hey guys? Come on, give me a win here. This I was so excited for, but it is a lot smaller than anticipated, but it does have a chain lengthener. Oh yeah, it's also bent before I even get it out of the package. There we go. Let's see if I can fix this here. Okay, that'll be cute. Not too bad, Sheen, not too bad. Is it bad that I literally ordered all this stuff hoping that I was going to have something to complain about? I also got this, what I am hoping is going to be a cute little barbed wire pentacle necklace, because I absolutely adored it. I fell in love with it. It's beautiful. So, what else did I order here? Because I honestly forgot most of what I put into this order. I kind of want to see what's in here first. It just says ricotta plastic, and I'm not sure what that means. Is that the packaging? Oh, what a cute little leather case. Oh, these are the ear cleaning tools. Well, this here's funky. Okay. So this here is an adorable little ear cleaning set. Now, we're going to try this out in a little bit. See how safe that is. Find out if I'm going to puncture my ear with it or not. I feel like I really should just have a professional do this and just stop using the oh god, what's it called? Q-tips that I keep buying because I'm not smart. I also got this cute little pimple popper set. It's got a weird little loop thing with a scoop on the end of it. So apparently these are all for like blackheads and whiteheads and all kinds of funky little tweezers here. Got some crazy looking little hooks, some pokey things. And this thing. So we're also going to try that out. But first, we're going to get into our video. And I have
After returning from a night to celebrate the arrival of the new year, my husband and I returned to our apartment complex.
Oh. Never mind, we're not going to use this one because it says that we're not allowed. Okay then. But I do still want to give the shout out to Mr. Revenant because he is absolutely awesome. Yeah. I just love that guy. He's pretty cool. He finds some of the most awesome stories that you can even think of. But yeah, let's get back to it. What do we got here?
Hey guys, I've put together the first half of August's videos.
Okay.
Next week, I'll be uploading the second half. I'd also like to thank my patrons: Elena Renee, Alex, Gemma Allen, Monica Level Ace, and Courtney Maxwell. So if you guys want to check out the perks of my Patreon, which includes a monthly outtake compilation, follow the link in the description. Anyway, enjoy the video, guys. When I was around 14, my family home got broken into. My mother was never able to get over the terror and disgust she felt over strangers violating our personal space. So we moved to a new home, a few blocks away. Our new home was big and safe, and had a security system. The only feature of this security system that we ever used was the electronic door lock, which came equipped with a passcode. My parents are of an age where it is more important for a password to be memorable than to be secret and secure. So they set the code to be the last 4 digits of our home phone number. Now this was back in 2004, so phone books were more commonplace, and literally anyone who had access to phone listings could have matched up our phone number to our address. The first 8 years or so of living in that house were fine. We never gave our passcode out to anyone. But now that the danger was out of our minds, we also never thought to change it. In 2012, my family bought a cabin, and subsequently spent many summer weekends, weeks, and sometimes months up there, with my dad coming back into the city for work. Being a 22-year-old woman with a healthy social life, I rarely joined them on the cabin trips away, instead opting to throw small parties with close friends. And I should note here that none of the parties I ever held resulted in strangers arriving in my home. They were all close friends who I trusted not to make a mess of the place while my family was away. Every time my family was away and I was alone in the house, I felt extremely tense and very freaked out. I often coerced friends and boyfriends into staying over, but even the days spent alone would get to me. The problem was the noises I would hear, often sounding like someone was still home, walking around upstairs, and the running water in the sink. Sometimes I would open a door and later find it was closed. My cat was constantly on edge, which I chalked up to my whole family being gone, and the silence making her nervous. One specific incident occurred one night in 2013. I had actually moved out by this point, but I often returned to pet sit while my family was away. Both of our family dogs were home, and my cat had been sick a few times that evening. So I decided the best course of action would be to stay overnight and keep an eye on her. I went downstairs to my former bedroom, and after an hour or so of playing on my phone and tossing and turning, I fell asleep. I had not been asleep for long, but I was jolted awake by the sounds of my dogs barking from upstairs. They are easy barkers, and my first instinct was to feel frustrated with them for interrupting my sleep. Suddenly, I heard what sounded like footprints thudding up the basement stairs, and I paused. I didn't hear another sound, so I left my bedroom to investigate. I got to the top of the stairs and noticed that the front door was wide open, and there were small bits of dirt and mud on the floor, as though someone had walked in with dirty shoes. After this, I absolutely refused to stay at my parents' place overnight. My friends and family chalked it up to being a prank, and my brothers both claimed ignorance. My mother in particular went so far as to tell me that it was probably just my overactive imagination, and that I had not closed the door properly or something. Things quietened down as I spent less and less time alone at my parents' place. In fact, everything was fine, until the spring of 2015. My family went out of town for a weekend, and took all the pets with them. I was still in the city Friday night, but left on Saturday to head out on a small road trip. On Sunday, I received a frantic message from my mom, asking me if I'd stop by the house at all before I left. I said no, and then she told me that when they arrived home, every single light in the house was on. She said the living room appeared lived in, with a dirty dish and half-empty water glass on the coffee table. She said that the basement door
I don't know if
was
these
wide
are worth
open,
it, guys. This
as
is
was the
kind
door
of
to my old bedroom,
tedious
and
and
that the bed
little
appeared messy
feeling,
and
and
unmade.
I don't really like it.
It is worth noting here that my mother is a bit of a clean freak and would never leave a dirty dish out before leaving for the weekend or
So I
neglect to
guess
turn
the
the
first
lights
thing that
off.
we're gonna try out of this is this
She
weird
would
little
also never let a bed go unmade for more than a few hours. In fact, this incident
See how it
terrified her so
feels?
much that she finally took my initial advice and changed the password for the front door to something more obscure. Everything was back to normal for a while. I even watched the house while my family was gone for a few times that summer. Then, one weekend came up, during which my family was at the lake, and I was unable to check up on the house due to hectic work and social weekend. We asked a trusted neighbor to keep an eye on the place and let us know if he saw anything suspicious. A couple of days later, he approached my parents to tell us that while we were gone, there had been no suspicious activity. No suspicious activity, except that their son had pulled up to the driveway in his silver car and had repeatedly tried to get in the front door. You know, the son who always checks up on the place when you guys are gone. He then saw the boy head around the side gate and attempt to open it before heading back to his car and driving away. This would have been all well and good, except for one minor detail. I have two brothers. Both of them were at the cabin, and neither of them drives a silver car. No other suspicious events have occurred since. I'm still petrified to spend too much time alone at my parents' place. I was maybe around 13 to 14 years old at the time, and I was recently granted the privilege of staying home alone. Every now and then, when I was home alone, I'd hear sounds coming from upstairs, and so I would instinctively call my mom. She then told me a story of how she used to hear things in her old house all the time, and how it's just the house settling in. Fast forward to many instances of sound later. I decided that the very next time I was going to be home alone, I was going to be completely silent and make as little noise as possible. Within the first half an hour, there was nothing, not a peep out of the entire house. I eventually got bored and felt safe, so I went to grab the TV remote and watch some TV. But a few seconds before I grabbed the remote, I heard a huge crash from upstairs and running footsteps. I was sure more than ever that someone was in the house. By now, there was plenty of consistent sounds coming from upstairs, and it became a fact that someone was upstairs. 14-year-old me decided to hatch a plan quick. Being the skinny, most non-threatening little girl I was, I first grabbed a kitchen knife. Then, I grabbed a shoe and propped open the front door. After a few
Okay, I was gonna say just call the police, but the worst part is that is exactly what I would do. Just, the worst part is that is exactly what I would do. I wouldn't call the police when I was 14. I'd have grabbed a fucking fudging knife. I would have ran up those stairs and tried to scare the absolute crap out of said attacker. That is exactly what I would do. Yeah, you're gonna try to scare me? I'm gonna get you. Ha 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 ha. That would have been me at 14. I was a weird, crazy little crap. But I wasn't a skinny little brat either. I was a big girl. Like, I'm amazed that I look the way that I do now, all things considered. These are not working as advertised. Either that or I'm doing it wrong. I might have to get Peter to help me with this later. See if I'm doing it incorrectly. But it isn't working. Sorry, guys.
minutes of some deep breaths, I yelled out in the deepest voice I could. I know you're upstairs. I'm giving you the chance to leave without me calling the police. I have propped the front door open, and I will be in the bathroom. Be aware that I'm holding a knife, and if you refuse to leave, I will call the police. Sure enough, I walk into the bathroom with my knife, absolutely scared to death that someone will open the door. I wait, and I wait, until the one sound that to this day will always scare me for this reason. I heard the front door close, and the shoe was moved. I quickly locked the door and turned on the alarm system. I hope to never see or even hear this person again. So my boyfriend and I moved into a house about 8 months ago. When we moved in, we noticed that no one lived in the house next door to us, and that it was rather run down. After about a month of us living here, we come home to see a very old man, in his 80s, cleaning up the yard. We introduce ourselves, and he tells us his name is Bob. He's the owner, and is in the works fixing up the place. We've probably seen Bob about once a month since we've moved in, usually cleaning up the yard, occasionally with someone helping him. I saw Bob about 3 weeks ago. We chatted for a bit, and he asked if I would roll his garbage can to the curb on trash day, which I did.
I'm sure that by now you guys
Everything seemed normal this past week, except for the fact that the gate to Bob's backyard had been left open several times, and we hadn't actually seen Bob or any of his cats in the house. I initially thought it was kids in the neighborhood.
Pierce my nose for your entertainment. Why? I do not know. I'm beginning to believe that I'm an idiot. But we're gonna try these things out. This is called a disposable nose piercing unit. Ooh, I'm so scared. And because... oh God. I am absolutely terrified. I'm absolutely terrified. Okay. So, I've always wanted to do this. I've always wanted my nose pierced. My mother would never let me get my nose pierced. I couldn't afford to go to a professional to get it done. Okay, it's gonna be easy to trigger it in. Okay, good. I'm terrified. I'm not sure how this is gonna go, and I'm scared. Okay.
Cutting through his yard, especially with school being out right now. But then one of my patio chairs in my backyard went missing. My boyfriend and I figured it was probably just some kids again. I didn't think too much of it, until I came home from work one day and noticed the gate open again. I decided to walk into his backyard and look around. After turning the corner around the gate, I see my patio chair hidden behind the house. I realized there was someone clearly hanging around Bob's house. I was pretty annoyed, so I went to pick up my chair and yelled, "I'm taking my shit back." As I did this, my boyfriend was at the side of the house and saw someone move behind a curtain. We went inside and decided to call the police because we thought someone had broken into Bob's house.
3.
I went back outside to double check the house number on the door and then saw someone crack the door open slightly, peeking out. I confronted him and asked him what he was doing there and why he stole my chair.
Oh my God.
He stepped out and said that he didn't have a stool to sit on, so he just decided to borrow it. And then he tried to ask us, but we must not have been home. He also says his uncle owns the house and is letting him stay there. My boyfriend asks what his uncle's name was, to which he backtracked and said that Uncle John was what he called him, but still couldn't provide an actual name. We asked if he had his uncle's phone number, which he conveniently didn't. Basically, we're 99% sure at this point that this guy is a squatter, as he didn't know Bob's name and didn't have his phone number. I knew Bob lived about 2 hours away, and the police wouldn't be able to do anything without him being able to confirm or deny this guy's story. I had to go on an extensive Google search, as Bob has a very common last name, but I finally found a landline listed in his name. After leaving a voicemail, Bob calls me back. He tells me that he doesn't have a nephew, and that there's definitely not supposed to be anyone in the
Holy
house.
shit!
He calls me again a bit later to tell me that he called the police, and they may be contacting me as well. 10 minutes later.
Oh my god,
the
that
police
brought
call.
so many
I
tears to
start
just
tell
one
them everything
eyeball.
that's happened, just getting to the part of him first peeking through the window. And the cop cut me off and says, "Ma'am, we will be coming on foot patrol in a few minutes. Please stay inside." And
Oh.
we hear the canines. We go to our
So this
window
little
and
plastic
see
thing
that the
broke
house
off.
next door is being swarmed with police. The canines are going crazy, and the officers are shouting for him
I
to
mean, it
surrender.
looks cute.
They eventually break the door down and arrest him.
I don't
After
think
the
I put
squad
it in the
cars
right
arrived
spot, but it
and
looks
he was all
cute.
gone, we went outside and spoke with the remaining officers. Turns out, the guy had been terrorizing a girl the next street over,
Oh my
slashed her
god.
tires, dumped gasoline on her car, and broke her window. She got a rental car, and he attacked that one too. They had been chasing him for the past 3 days throughout the neighborhood, but he kept disappearing. They couldn't figure out where he was hiding until Bob called. Anyway, it's been an interesting Easter.
Okay. Holy fudge.
In 1990 to 1991, my mom started working at a group home as a youth worker, doing counseling and support work. For context, this home was in a residential area,
Huh.
not too far from the local hospital or police station.
Well, that didn't feel nice.
This home had 3 floors and had about 8 different girls who lived on the second floor and had an attic above.
Oh,
The main
wow.
floor was where the office and kitchen
Didn't
area
feel nice,
was.
but it looks quite pretty.
At the time, the agency
So I guess
didn't have
that's
strict
kind of an upside,
regulations,
right?
so my mom would be working night shifts by herself and have to manage all these kids alone. One night, my mom began her shift and was made aware of some creepy information. Both the home supervisor and the kids who lived in the home
Oh my god, I'm
reported weird
shaking.
smells at night, sounds from the attic, and food going missing on day and night shifts. Keep in mind, at the time, nobody was allowed up there or stayed there. My mom would have to do half-hour checks to ensure all the doors were locked. However, during her shifts, she didn't notice any problems. Thankfully for her, none of the
Oh.
weird events took place on her specific shifts. As events kept being reported, they called in maintenance workers. When the maintenance workers went around to check the property, they noticed that one of the windows on the 3rd floor, to a room which was locked, had been broken. The room wasn't accessible from the inside of the house, so nobody knew. Unfortunately, that room had access to the attic.
Shit, my nose is
The
bleeding.
maintenance workers went up to check the attic and found various things. Food wrappers, clothing, and even various things from the residents' bedrooms.
Okay, so that
The
had...
room that was locked
been
off from
done.
the inside of the house was able to be opened from the other side, meaning that at some point, throughout the night and day shifts, the stowaway was walking inside the home, and no one knew. They would have had to have come down when the residents were either being taken to school, asleep, or at appointments. But they were also able to view the schedule in the board office. They would have known when staff were coming and going, and any days residents would have been gone. During the time that the stowaway had occupied the attic, there were reports from other staff members about them feeling as though they were being watched.
I can't even get that in.
Eventually, the maintenance workers fixed the windows, the fridge was locked, and security cameras were installed. There weren't any issues after that.
I think I did something wrong.
I lived with my mom in a house we bought a year and a half ago, but only moved in 6 months ago because of all the renovations that needed to be done. Often when it was in the Reno stage, I would go over there at night to hang out. And almost
Beginning to
every
think
time
I
I was
wasn't
there,
supposed to take
I
this
would
one
hear
back.
creepy creaky noises. They freaked me out, especially since the renovations included adding a whole wing to the house, which made it very easy for unwanted guests to enter. However, I know that houses
There we
make
go.
sound, so I tried to forget about it. One late night, during the Reno phase, I went over to the second house and punched
Now,
in
I'm
the
not
garage
sure, but I
door
don't think it's supposed to
because I
bleed
didn't
this
have a
much.
key. You could hear the garage opening from pretty much anywhere
But I'm
in the
also,
house,
once again,
if
not
you're
an
not making
expert.
too much
I have
noise.
no idea what I'm doing,
As
and
the
I just
garage
did this
door
myself
began
with a
to
freaking
open,
clip tool.
I heard loud
So,
sounds, like pots and pans being banged together. At that time, we didn't
Gonna
have any
grab
fans
some
in the
alcohol.
house. To be honest, I was terrified. Just standing there, trying to decide what I was hearing, and what I should do about it. Ultimately, I decided to close the garage door and go back home. I have not heard anything like this before, or since. After this, I only went to the house if I had someone with me. A couple of months later, me and my mom moved in. Fast forward to present day, the creepy house noises that I heard in the Reno phase have diminished, but I still hear them. Almost exclusively at night, roughly 3 to 4 a.m. They sound like someone accidentally knocking their elbow against the door.
So I like
to be too
to not
concerned
think
about,
to buy
but I always
alcohol,
sleep with my
so-
fan on, because I sleep in late, and the white noise blocks out any potential sounds that could scare me, and make it hard for me to sleep. Last night, I wanted to conserve some energy, so I didn't turn it on. I was lying in my bed, lights off, when I heard the sound, what sounded like my basement door closing. It was 5 a.m., so definitely not my mom. I continued to hear what sounded like shuffling noises, coming down the hall towards my room.
Okay.
My mom's bedroom is on the other side of the house, so she wouldn't hear this. I dialed 911, but didn't press call, trying to rationalize. After a few minutes of hearing nothing, I turned on my fan, but kept my phone turned on. 911 still dialed. Eventually I went to sleep. I have foster kittens that sleep in a dog crate near my mom's room.
Okay.
This morning,
Well,
one of them
that's
was
done.
acting peculiar, very scared,
Huh.
hiding, hissing when I went near him. I've had him for a week, and he only exhibited this behavior in the first day, and he was fine when I put him to bed last night. His brother is a lot more laid back than
Oh,
him,
I need
and I haven't
some
noticed a change in
coffee.
his behavior, but I'm not entirely sure I would, since he's better with strangers. Tonight, I'm gonna put tape on the attic and basement doors. I sincerely hope it's still there when I wake up tomorrow.
So, because I now have a little beautiful gaping wound on my nose, we're not going to do a full
Okay,
makeup
so,
pat down,
back
and
when I
yes,
was in
I
the
did just pick my
military,
nose.
I was
really
based out in California. This was pretty much right
Oh
at
my
the start of the
Lord.
housing bust, and I found myself newly divorced following a deployment. As such, I could no longer live on base and had to move. I quickly discovered that it now was the same price or cheaper to rent a house instead of an apartment off base.
I'm not sure if you guys
So I got in
understand the
touch
amount
with
of
a
pain I
realtor
just put
who
myself
worked with
through.
residents of a local gated community. As a newly single female with zero family in the area, I thought extra security could be a good thing. I soon found the perfect house. It was amazing. It had a wraparound porch with a view of the lake in the center of the community, had trees blocking my views of my neighbors, an awesome kitchen, which I love cooking, and tons of local wildlife. I could easily see myself recovering from what had been an ungodly rough year.
Huh.
The owner mostly lived overseas, so I really never dealt with him, except when I moved out. But he seemed very nice, if a bit particular. He obviously loved the house, so I didn't think much of that. The 2 times I needed something looked after, his brother came to deal with them, as he was a handyman of sorts. I always found it a bit weird that him and his brother looked like they could have been twins, to the point where I thought his brother was him when he came to pick up the dryer when it needed fixing. Literally, he picked it up and carried it out in his arms. The funny thing about PTSD brain, though, is that lots of normal things seem weird while strange things seem normal. So I never really thought of the landlord-brother situation as odd until after. Maybe it was normal, and the whole oddness of what happened is setting off my paranoia. I don't really know. But yeah, landlord odd. The brother was apparently the Hulk. Both spoke to me like I was their kid, who needed very strict instructions. Anyway, I enjoyed my time in the house. My emotional support pup loved it too. The next door neighbors had dogs for her to play with, but my PTSD and other mental issues had me on a path headed straight for medical separation. But then the president issued a series of rollback programs, and my commander highly suggested for me to take the early separation. There were a few reasons surrounding this, but the main one was the squadron knew they were the reason I was mentally messed up, and that there were more than a few people who had it in for me still at the clinic I was assigned to. Those people kept writing me up for things that no one else got written up for. Examples of this: accidentally jamming the shredder that jammed at least once a week, leaving the front desk unattended while I was having an anaphylactic attack. Having a panic attack, which left my work unattended because I was literally curled up in a ball in the corner. You get the picture. Of course, my brain took most of this stuff at face value, and figured it was okay, and I deserved it. But my commander was trying to protect me as best as she could, and get me out of a clearly hostile work environment ASAP. So I applied, and was approved for separation. Now, this meant I was leaving my lease before the year was out. I forget if my landlord just decided to be nice, or if I had to pull out a law about military members being entitled to an early release from a lease when their duty assignments changed. Probably the second one, because he wasn't happy. I didn't really have the mental capacity to care too much about putting him out though, because my scrambled brains all of a sudden had a lot of military paperwork and processing to deal with. Not to mention the fact that the whole idea that I was separating felt very surreal in the first place. I'd always thought I'd be a lifer. I didn't tell any of my neighbors I was moving. Only one of my friends knew exactly when I was moving out, and even my movers didn't know exactly when, because I stayed on the air mattress for about a week after they picked up my things. To the best of my knowledge, no one on the base knew exactly when my house would be vacant either, because I actually stayed in a motel off base for a few days after I moved out, just to make the final days of last-minute paperwork easier. They knew my travel plans, but I'd marked my starting location for the trip as my base, not the house. What you should be getting out of this is that only 2 people for sure knew the exact date I was leaving the house. My friend and my landlord. That said, even my landlord didn't know the exact date I'd be leaving the area, just when I'd vacate the premises. My landlord told me to drop the keys off in the realtor's mailbox, so that's what I did. And, after a few days, I left on my road trip home. Now about a day later, I get a call from my landlord. I'm on the road with my pup when I answer. Hey, you left your camera here. Are you sure? Yeah, it's a Nikon, with a nice set of lenses and a camera bag. Oh, I don't have one of those. Really? My brother said you did. I try to think back, and I remember his brother coming over to drop off the dryer while my sister and nephew were in town. She's an avid photographer, and I figure she must have had the camera bag out in preparation for our day trip to San Francisco. No, I only have one of those Canons that you fit into your pocket. He must be thinking of my sister's, but she for sure brought that home with her months ago. The landlord was silent for a while, before saying, well, what about the sleeping bag that's here? No, I definitely have my sleeping bag. The landlord again describes my sleeping bag exactly. No, I have mine. I slept in it last night. The landlord is quiet again, before answering. There's a backpack here too, with a few random items. Did you tell one of your friends they could stay here for the rest of your lease? No, only one of my friends even knows exactly when I moved out, and he's visiting his wife who's deployed in Korea right now. Well, someone's been living here. At this point, it should have occurred to me how weird it was that he'd gone from the friendly, hey, you forgot this, to the angry, you let some squatter here, as fast as he did. But it was only just getting through my head that someone had moved in the moment I moved out. This house didn't have an attic, so this couldn't have been one of those someone was living in the attic while I was living there situations. There wasn't even a sealed off part of this house where this could be done. And I even went into the basement on a regular basis. It's possible someone was living in the woods behind the house, but I have no idea. Anyway, my landlord wanted me to come over and check the stuff to make sure it wasn't mine. I told him that I'd finished up my paperwork, so I was on the road and already in Oregon. He clearly didn't expect me to leave the area already, since I still had a few days on my lease. And he told me he'd call me back after he figured things out. He never called me back. I messaged him later to follow up, but all I got was short no responses to my questions. No, they didn't know whose stuff it was. No answer when I told him I was freaked out and wanted to know what happened. Yes, he'd gotten both sets of keys from the realtor. No, he hadn't found anything else. Not long after, I got my full deposit back, which I hadn't been expecting since I felt bad for not staying my whole lease. I hadn't planned on asking for it. It wasn't until relaying this to my mom that I realized exactly how weird the whole thing was. Or that my landlord might have been making up the squatter. She pointed out how strange it was that the guy who was supposedly traveling too much to use his own house would show up himself to walk through the house after I left. Especially since his brother did everything while I lived there. Neither of us are really sure if he was up to something, or if there really had been some extremely creepy stalker or squatter situation. Either way, the whole thing played with my already messed up head. I grew up in a village in Serbia, but after I graduated, I moved to Switzerland in search of a better life. I inherited the house I grew up in. Today, nobody is living in it, but it doesn't look abandoned. It's furnished. Me and my Swiss fiancée stay there when we're visiting Serbia, and I take good care of it whenever I visit, which is about 2 to 3 times a year. But this time, we had an unpleasant surprise when I found our entrance gate locked and movement inside the house. Eventually, the family, which were gypsies, the husband, wife, their 5 to 6 children, came to the fence to confront us. I said, "What are you doing here? We own this property." And the dad replied, "No, the house was empty, and the house belongs to the one who lives in it." One of the kids says, "This man isn't going to kick us out, right, Dad?" And then the dad replies, "You see, my kids love it here. Also, you live abroad. You are rich. People like you should help the poor folks here." And they proceeded to hang out in the garden, ignoring us. While we were trying to talk to them, I called the police, and the operator said they can't just burst in like that, and that I need to report those squatters at a police station before any action could take place. Because it's Serbia, nothing functions in the Balkans. Pissed off by police and tired of the squatters ignoring me, I took a big piece of rock by the fence and I tried to break the lock. Huge mistake. A commotion started amongst the squatters. I didn't understand anything because they were yelling in their own language, and they became very aggressive. The woman started yelling profanities, how they are poor, have sick children, and at first, I thought this was a good sign, and now they want to talk. But before I could say one word, I saw the father with something metal in his hands, yelling at me to back off from the fence. My fiancé became scared, since things turned dangerous, and said we should leave. So we did. With suitcases and backpacks still in our hands, we went to the police station, and after some strings pulled, they agreed to kick the squatters out tomorrow. The next day, we came to our property with police presence, hoping that the squatters would just leave when they see the cops. No, now it was worse. We were greeted by 2 giant dogs that weren't there yesterday, and a group of gypsies came to the property to support the squatters. The officers called for backup and vests. Talking to the gypsies was impossible, since they were...
Okay, so I wish that you would stop calling them gypsies. That's a slur. And there are a lot of people who are of that type of ethnicity that are not going to break into your home and try to steal it. Okay, so the people who do these kinds of things and are Romani make all of the rest of us Romani people look frickin' bad. Like, seriously. That's like... Ugh. I can't even help it. I kind of hate these people. Like, seriously? Why are you trying to make an entire community of people look terrible? Because your actions reflect on the rest of your community. Just saying. We do not get to steal people's homes and freeload in them even if they are out of country. I mean, at the end of the day, you probably could have just asked this man, hey, can we rent out your cottage while you're not living here? Or hey, can we stay here while you're not? And they probably would have let you. Feather dusters.
We're ignoring everybody across the fence, and I was comforting my crying fiance, who was fed up by all of this. When the vests arise, they tranquilize the dogs, which pissed off the squatters. As the police entered the property, they were attacked by gypsies. A brawl lasted a couple of seconds and resulted in all adult squatters getting handcuffed and arrested. As we entered the house, we saw that the interior was ruined by the squatters. They were living like animals, furniture destroyed, walls were stained. There were feces in one of the rooms, and then shock after shock. In one of the drawers, we found a lot of valuable goods, a lot of golden jewelry, cash, cell phones. The officers took all of that so they could see if it was stolen, but we all knew it was. Last but not least, an officer told me this in the end. Some of them are going to be released in a couple of days, that's for sure. And if I were you, I would be very careful. Given the amount of valuable goods, or to have revenge, they might come back. Secure your property. It's been almost a week since I slept properly. I'm afraid that they could get here any night. And I'm also anxious, because I'm soon leaving back to Switzerland. We're tired as hell. During the day, we work all day fixing the damage, and we can't sleep in the night.
These people
I
are
just hope we
ruining
don't
the
meet them
name
again.
of Romani humans everywhere. I can't take it.
The summer before last, I took a road trip from my home in Colorado up the west coast into Canada. My northernmost destination being Fernie, British Columbia, in Canada, as I have family there. I mapped out a series of campgrounds to stay in, instead of hotels. I loved camping, and it would help me stay on budget as well. My boyfriend at the time was also traveling, so we were planning to meet up in San Francisco and get to Seattle together. I was doing the first bit of the trip with just my dog, and my first planned campsite was a place called Skull Valley Primitive in Utah, owned by the Bureau of Land Management. I found the site easily. The camping spots are up a dirt hill, so I took the first site I saw, as my car's not made for off-roading. I set up my tent without any issues, and changed into my hiking boots. It was so hot, I remember my poor dog had to have a cool towel down after I set up camp, because he couldn't cool down. There were a ton of other campsites, but hardly anyone using them. There were 2 RVs I came across, parked super far away from my site, and I was definitely the only tent camper. I decided to go take a hike around before the sun was down. The campsite is adjacent to these mountains that rise out of flat ground and have what appear to be cave dwellings carved in the face of them. I wanted to investigate, so Teddy, my dog, and I started off in that direction. After only a few minutes of walking, we hit a barbed wire fence. I didn't think twice about ducking under it and continuing onwards. I just didn't think it would be a problem. Only after a few yards, after I had hopped the fence, I stopped dead in my tracks. An eerie and unusual sound was coming from the direction of the cave dwellings. The best description I can give you is that it sounded like dozens of humans trying to howl like wolves. Like many people pretending to be a wolf pack. And it sounded like its origin was inside the caves themselves. My dog was as spooked as I was, and had already started running back to the campsite when I turned around. The sounds continued until I was well inside the camp perimeters. The sun was almost completely set when I decided to let Teddy out for one last bathroom break. I was freaked out by what had happened and didn't want to be running around in the dark. Teddy is a dog that simply does not need a leash. He is never more than several feet away from me, so I didn't use one. I zipped up the tent and walked with him away from our site, and then suddenly, he was gone. I couldn't see
heaven. Is that still recording? Yeah, you're still recording. Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I have no idea how this happened, but awesome. So, my computer just died. Absolutely beautiful. But that is okay.
The sun had finished setting by the time I finally gave up screaming for him and returned to my tent, which had not been left alone. The tent had a broken zipper when I arrived, and my stuff was strewn about inside, though nothing was missing. I want to emphasize the fact that during this time period, I noticed there were no nature noises, no crickets chirping or anything, and I felt what I can only describe as complete dread, sheer terror. I was simply petrified. I've never felt so scared in my life. In fact, I feel the same terror just writing this out. It's truly the most scared I've ever been,
With a
and
little
I will
bit of
never
lipstick.
forget it. I made the choice to grab my taser and keep trying to find Teddy. After a bit longer of whistling and shouting for him, I realized he wasn't coming back. So I headed into my tent. I used some safety pins I had to pin it closed,
Because
since
let's
the
just be
zipper was
honest
now
here.
broken. This is where things get even weirder.
We can't be glamorous
As I lay
with the
there,
lipstick.
trying not to totally freak out, something started to violently shake my tent from multiple angles. I could feel it, or them, whatever it was, brush against my feet sometimes, and the shaking was relentless. At some point several hours later, I heard my dog outside the tent, and peeked out. It was him. I quickly unpinned part of the door, and he hopped in. His behavior was definitely off, and he reacted to the constant shaking of our tent, even more so than I did. Neither of us slept that night, and as soon as morning came, we were gone.
So,
I called my now ex-boyfriend
honestly,
on the
I
drive
think
out
that we did an
and
awesome
recounted
job
exactly
here.
what had happened. He began to Google the area and found out that the area I had walked into was actually the site of an extremely
Like-
small and impoverished Native American reservation. So his hypothesis was that they had been watching me and decided to mess with me after dark.
And look at my little new
I can
nose
believe this to
wing.
some extent. It is
Not
somewhat
putty.
plausible, I guess.
Okay, so I think we did a pretty good job. Thank you for coming to my YouTube channel. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Welcome back to my
When I was
YouTube
about
channel.
10
You
or
guys are
11,
absolutely
my sister,
beautiful.
who would have been
It
15
has
now,
been
got
an
my
absolutely
dog,
gorgeous
who would have been